Okay,
Wonderful.
no problem. Say
So-
hi to us.
Yes, definitely.
All right. They're saying hi to you.
Hi. So welcome to our session. This is Values plus AI equals Impact. Today is April 9th. It is 1400 CEST. It's our second session for today, and we're looking forward to some wonderful conversations to find out, A, who the people are who are sharing with us in the room, B, finding out how they're using their values to impact the world, and then try to discover together how we can be using AI to enhance that. So, Vinod, why don't you, for those of us here, but also for those of us who are watching the recording later, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, and how you're looking to use AI to enhance your projects at the moment.
Thank you, Rhonda. So I'm Vinod. I live in India, about 150 miles north of Delhi in the Himalayan foothills. I'm an executive coach. And we've seen that in the last few years, AI is gaining prominence in the coaching circles. And I've started using it in small ways. One is to bounce my thoughts off sometimes. I use it to prepare for, let's say, a session that I am doing, a training session. Sometimes I would use it to design the kind of workshop that I want to do. Take inputs from ChatGPT, for example, give them a plot and ask them for suggestions. I also use it as a labor saving device. For example, when I do a 360, I get inputs from, let's say, 15 different people. And I could use AI to condense those 15 inputs into 3 key areas to work upon. Of course, it goes without saying that whatever output is generated through the AI engine, I then add my own tweaks to it to further, or in a way, to make it realistic, because my understanding is that AI is still, in a learning stage, and it does go wrong at times. For example, sometimes when I use a image generation AI, for example, Midjourney, so it will create a person with 6 fingers or 8 fingers, so they are still not able to do it very well. So likewise, I think AI is still got a lot of flaws, and we need to be aware of the current level at which it is operating and not use it blindly.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vinod. Charles, what are you working on with AI at the moment? What can we have you doing with you today?
Okay, I'm working on with AI a little bit. I'm still a beginner and a learner, but to help me address some problems. I run, or I'm the global coordinator of World Values Day, and we're, as I was mentioning to you before, Rhonda, we're looking at using AI to, I guess you could say, optimize the website and social media accounts to give us advice on optimizing it for more languages, for instance. And just to tell you something very quickly, because I don't want to take up too much time introducing myself, but when I ran after a session this morning, Rhonda, I actually asked AI the questions that we've been asking ourselves about how to do that. And I tried two, ChatGPT and Claude, and they both not only came up with pretty much the same answers as each other, but they came up with pretty much the same answers as we had come up with in a non-AI situation, just a few people putting their heads together. So it shows you at least it saves time. And probably doesn't produce necessarily magic answers to problems that we couldn't otherwise solve ourselves, but it certainly saves time. So I'm looking for help in making, helping to administer, manage projects, initiatives in a less time-consuming and less human resource heavy way. That's certainly what I'm interested in. I think principally in AI. I have used it in to write some papers and to do other things, but I find I'm not the best person at using AI in that way. I don't know, but I found it so full of errors. That was ChatGPT, but Claude was a little bit better. I haven't used the other ones you mentioned. So yeah, I find it useful, and I'm sure it'll become much more useful. So I want to get more accustomed to it and more knowledgeable about it.
Well, that's wonderful. And it could very well be that whatever you're putting in as the original prompt, if the machine doesn't understand exactly what you're saying, as I mentioned in the earlier session, I put the same prompt into 5 different machines, and one of them didn't understand me at all. And I got something that for me was total nonsense, but it obviously wasn't understanding the way I was entering the prompt. And so it could be, Charles, we may want to look at that sometime later, is to actually open this up and look at the prompt and see, based on what it gives us, if we put in the next prompt, if it would get us closer to what it is that you're thinking about. And for the thing you meant, the problem you mentioned earlier today, I would guess Perplexity, because it would give you sources, would be something where you could then double check and say, oh, they're mentioning this tool or this opportunity or this process. Then you could actually go and read up on it, which would maybe make it easier than just getting the definitive answer from, Claude or ChatGPT or whoever. So you might get more input if you can also go and see where it's coming from.
Yeah, I certainly liked Perplexity. I haven't used it much, but I used it once or twice after you'd mentioned it, and yeah, that it does. I can see all the advantages there. I like it.
Wonderful, excellent. So, what can we help with today? I'm Rhonda Bowen, by the way. I just sit here and help to make sure that all of this works and that we all stay coordinated and find out the ways that we can help the people who are here in the room, but also for those of you who are watching us later. What is it that you're looking at, and how can we actually show some things and discover together how we can be using AI to underscore what we're doing, but also to improve what we're doing and to make it easier for us. So, do you have any ideas or things that you're looking for that we could open up a page and look at things together?
Yeah, we can do that, Rhonda. I just thought it might be useful to dwell upon what Charles alluded to a little while ago, that sometimes we use AI to, let's say, prepare a document. There are times when these documents are used as submissions, particularly by students. So I'm connecting it with our own value systems, that earlier, let's say, to make a submission, a person had to work hard and prepare that certain document. Now AI can do it straight away. A lot of college students are submitting their projects and theses which have been prepared by AI. And so in that sense, their value system is undergoing a change. There are people who've written their PhDs through one of the AI platforms. So I'm sure even coaches are vulnerable to this, and need to be aware, in terms of how to use it to their benefit, and not get sucked into the AI driving the coach rather than the coach taking help from the AI platform.
Mm-hmm. Well, this takes me back. We were speaking in the earlier session about comparing what we have experienced in our lives as people and things that we've gone through in the past and comparing it to what's happening now. And the thing about students using AI to do academic work of whatever sort, I remember when I was growing up, my uncle, who was an engineer, was so pleased when he bought me my first calculator to do math, because he always realized how poor I was at math. And he always ended up being my math tutor because he was the engineer. And so the minute a calculator was available, the first thing my uncle did as a Christmas present was buy me a calculator. And the first thing I found out was I wasn't allowed to take it to my math class in school. And he was so upset because he said, you know, the whole point is, yes, you can sit down and do, you know, mathematics, you know, the application of addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Anybody can sit down and sort of work on that really hard and figure it out. But he said, you really don't need to do that because now the calculator does that. But my math teacher in school didn't believe in the things that didn't have the same values as my uncle did, who was an engineer. And so going back to those values conflicts that had come up many, many years ago, and I mean, I don't do anything now without a calculator, number one, but it doesn't mean that mathematics has died just because we all have access to a calculator.
Right.
And so I'm comparing a lot of what's going on in AI to the time when I had to do all of my math in my head or on a piece of paper and show all the steps and prove that I knew how to get there, versus knowing how to take my finger and punch the numbers into the calculator. And for me, that's a very similar path that we're on at the moment. Of course, young people don't remember what it meant to not have a calculator, so it's hard for them to imagine that. But on the other hand, none of us are complaining anymore that we don't have a calculator to do, you know, the 4 basics of arithmetic. And we don't bother doing that anymore in our heads. At least I don't. And so I think now we're trying to see that when we bridge the gap to all of us who wrote academic papers by hand and, you know, really had to sit down and think through everything and do all the research out of books and whatever else, the fact that people now don't have to do that anymore, the question is, how do we make sure we align the values and not push our idea of values onto people because they are just using what is at hand for them, meaning the AI, just as my math teacher wouldn't accept me bringing the calculator that my uncle knew as an engineer would be such a wonderful help with me, but I wasn't allowed to bring it to my math class. And the question is, where do we draw the line? And the question is, how do we figure out what is right and how do we align with everybody's values? Because we were speaking this morning about looking at books and having to sit and look at a whole row of books and pick ones and choose different things versus everything you need in the world is in one little device. And those of us who grew up with books don't have this feeling about, I just open up this thing and it knows everything that I want to find out. And I think it's an interesting time in our lives, generationally speaking, about how we actually adapt to these things. And I think that goes back to what you were saying, Vinod, about how do we make sure that what is okay for submitting an academic work? And who decides what is okay?
Yeah.
Thoughts, gentlemen?
Let's hear from you, Charles.
Yeah, no, I think that's very much what I feel, that we're exploring a totally new territory here with AI. We've been exploring it with technology generally, as you say, for, you know, well, for the last 100 and something years, but more specifically with electronic-based technology since the calculator came on and since, I don't know, radio and television were invented, actually. That was the first big change in our perspectives, wasn't it? And suddenly we could look at the rest of the world and see what was going on in the rest of the world, or hear what was going on there. And now we can actually do tasks, as you say, with a little device. We pick it up and we can do tasks which not just long division or multiplication, but a task which would have taken a team of scholars some time to do before. In other words, we can get ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity to actually summarize the state of knowledge now in some abstruse area of biotechnology or whatever it is, and we can get that presented to us. We still don't, if we're not an expert in biotech, we can't actually, we don't know whether it contains inaccuracies, and maybe it does. But as you say, we can cross-check. We can use several different AI tools, and we can guard against that a little bit. But suddenly we can get the knowledge of the world delivered to us, not only knowledge, but actually analysis of that knowledge and recommendations for action too, because we can ask these models, to tell us what they suggest. I got one to write a business plan for me the other day. It was quite good. I thought better than anything I would have written myself, really. Far too long, of course, but then it's easy to chop things down. So I think this. I've been to lots of sessions on discussing values in AI in the sense of how do we make sure that AI tools have values? How do we make sure they're not going to self-replicate and take over the world, or even on a less catastrophic level, cut corners, do things that I wouldn't want them to do if it were my son, daughter, or whatever, and how not behave in a proper way. So how do we get AI to behave in what we think is the proper way? And then we get into all sorts of discussions about, well, what is, whose values are we talking about here? Is it mine? Is it yours? Is it somebody sitting running China, or somebody sitting running amazingly running the United States of America? Is it their values? Well, maybe not. So I think it's just a totally fascinating area. I don't really have any answers, which is why I'm sitting here trying to find out more about what the actual subject matter is.
Your ideas.
My mind has wandered to a slightly different area. I did a workshop, or rather a value building exercise for an organization, and the format was that, let's say if for example, let's say honesty was one of the values that the organization valued, then we would get a group of people together and they brainstorm on this value. What does it mean for them? How does it play across their lives? How do they see it play across other people in the organization? And in various ways, this would get discussed. And then before we end the meet, we ask every individual, rather I would ask every individual to identify one key takeaway which they are going to implement in the next week. Try it out with the people around them, because the following week when they come back for the next session, they've got to share how did it play out, how did people respond to the changes or whatever they tried out. And now the next session, people discuss the outcome of what they tried out, and that again generates further discussion. At the end of the second session, they again go back with something that they want to try out before they come back for the third session. And so likewise, simply by practically trying out ways and means through which this value can be practiced in the organization, you're kind of building it up. You are kind of ensuring that people see that value system being practiced and not just hung on a frame on the wall. So I was just thinking that, is there any way that AI can be brought into a process like this?
I can tell you something I just watched during the break in between the session before and this one. A gentleman I've been following for a while who does very practical things with AI. and he had ChatGTP open on his phone, and he was standing in front of the phone, and he held up a book,
Mm.
and he showed the picture, he showed through the phone, the book, and said to ChatGTP, what is this book? Who is the author of this book and what it's about?
Mm.
And he did this 3 times with 3 very different kinds of books. One book written by somebody that most of us would have never heard of. One book written by somebody, Henry Kissinger, that most of us in our age at least would have heard of. And then a book, a very new book about doing events, which probably nobody normally would have ever heard of because it was a brand new book. And all he did was show the cover.
Mhm.
And ChatGTP recognized the book, said who had written the book, what it was about, basically. And for one of the books, he said, well, can you give me a 5-paragraph summary of what was in the book? And it did that as well, while he was standing there holding the book
Mm.
in his hands. I'll put that in the chat as well for us all to look at on the thing. And what I think that's important about that is he was using it in his comment, you'll see at the end, was, isn't it fascinating that we can take a book, let the AI tool explain a minimum about it, and so people get an idea before they actually even open the cover. And he said, isn't this a wonderful thing to do with our children? And that the book gives them enough of an insight that then they would maybe say, oh, that sounds interesting, I want to read this book.
Mm.
And I love the application of it, because for those of us as adults just getting, okay, this is the 2-minute summary thing, that's a nice thing. But he's saying if people hear about a book and they think it's interesting, that being the motivation for them to actually go and read the book and not just get the 5 sentences from the model. And so I'm wondering if we're not paying enough attention to the things that people are showing us, like making life easier or writing a better business plan or, all of these nice things that we've been discussing here. But what is it that we can be doing to make sure that when we get our hands on whatever this material is and we use a model, what can we be doing to do things that also enhances our values? So if we want people to read, putting up a video like this online and saying, go do this now with your kids and hold up some books and then ask your kids, as you were saying, Vinod, go out and try it out with the values, as you were saying in your workshop. Which of these 3 books sounds most interesting to you from what ChatGPT is saying? So why don't you go read this book?
Mm.
So I think looking for, let's say, the exploratory uses of this is a very important thing we need to be doing. So not just saving time, making it faster, all the nice things that we're hearing about a lot in the media and what people are showing other people online. But there are other things we can be doing with this as well. And I think it's up to us, to be informed about those things. Like, as I said, I'll share this video with you, but also what are the things that we could be doing to enhance what we're doing in a totally different way, and not just doing what you sort of see, modeled somehow on whatever kind of thing online, but how do we actually come up with ideas to do this? He also, in this video, you'll love it, he's bald, and ever since I've known anything about this gentleman, he's been bald. And he asked ChatGPT about his hairstyle. And that was something it didn't work well at, because it asked him something like, is it a new hairstyle? Well, first of all, it should know him because he's been working with ChatGPT for a very long time now. And B, it didn't know how to talk about him being bald.
Mm.
Because it probably, whatever it recognizes as hair, and because there is no hair, and he doesn't have a mustache or a beard or anything, it's an egghead, if you will, there was no hair for the model to identify with.
Hmm.
And so when you watch that part of it, you'll see that that's the part that didn't come out terribly well. But all the things that it knew how to do well, like recognize the book and explain what is in the book, was extremely powerful. And I'm just hoping that we all get the opportunity to find out things like this and to also think for ourselves when I say, you know, what are we here to do and how can we enhance what we're doing? We can maybe come up with totally new things on our own that we can be doing with AI that nobody else is doing. But I'm sure there are millions of people around the world who are doing lots of things with AI that we haven't all found out about yet. And the point is just making sure that not only we're doing those things that are good for us, but seeing how we can apply that and giving it to other people like you do through your workshop, like how do we take this business plan and actually make something with it to move forward? So I think there are also bits of opening the doors, let's say, to a wonderful new world, and we can find lots of very creative ways to be working with these things as well. And that's the part that's really fascinating for me at the moment, is just seeing how many different ways we can find to actually be using these things to enhance what we're doing.
And even ask ChatGPT as to how it can help, let's say, this value building exercise.
Yes. Because I'm working on a new project with 2 other business people, and we'd had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and yesterday we had another meeting, and I hadn't had much time to get anything organized, but I put in like 5 lines of text of something we discussed the last time, and I said, so what could we do with this as a project if we wanted to offer this as a service to companies? It came up with pages and pages of things from my 5 lines of text. And when I said, so, you know, this is okay, this is what you're saying as the outline, what are the names of specific services that we could be offering? It came up with another few pages. And then I said, what would be applicable prices for these services? And it said, do you want a pricing table? Do you want a chart? Do you want a PowerPoint presentation? How do you want this? And it gave me the chart that I wanted because it was just for us to be talking about internally. But the whole point is knowing that it has access to so many different things and coming up with something realistic, as opposed to each of the 3 of us who does something totally different and we've never worked together before. I don't know if it will be what we'll be doing in the end, but it's a wonderful basis. We all said, good, now we take this, each of us looks at it from our own perspective, and we have put it in a place where we can all work on it in a collaborative way and come up with the document that the 3 of us really want. But we spent a lot less time. We only spent half an hour yesterday on the call because we had so much to start with.
I'm just thinking it could also be a double-edged sword. You know, I'm relating it to another incident wherein a conflict between 2 countries, and you know, one of the countries was kind of apprehensive about a certain information getting leaked out, you know, and then one of the people, he had a different view. He says, okay, if you have a problem of, let's say, a certain piece of information which you have no control over and it's likely to get leaked out, why don't you leak out more information? Leak out so much information that it's not possible for the other person or the other side to fish out the correct information. And so likewise, when we generate too many options, one of the downsides is that then it becomes harder for us to pick the option that is useful to us. So I think one also needs to be mindful of that.
But that's one of the things that the AI will do for you. It will overgenerate, first of all. And then when you say, these are the criteria, now choose the top 3 or the top 5 or whatever it is based on this, it will actually then sort through and reduce the number of things that you have. Yeah, which is also great. Wonderful. Well, this has been an interesting conversation, gentlemen. I'm just looking at the clock. We usually set this up for a 30-minute call. Do either of you have anything else that you'd like us to discuss today? I have time. It's just that I want to be respectful of your time as well.
No, I think it was a useful conversation, Rhonda, as always. And I would look forward to the next one for us to discuss something new or
Okay.
maybe learn something new from you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Charles.
Question of Vinod. You were saying, I'm not sure I quite caught what you were saying exactly about using AI in coaching, but I'm not a coach, but I've talked to a number of coaches over the last year or so who are using AI-driven tools to assist them in their coaching practice. And some of them are, I don't think, are yet using AI to conduct a whole coaching session, but they're certainly envisaging doing so. So, you know, one of them spoke to me about using AI to do sort of follow-up sessions where, you know, sort of like maintenance sessions or repeating certain exercises, whatever the, you know, the way the coaching had taken them. Care and maintenance really of the relationship. So, and meaning that, you know, maybe they'd have a coaching session face to face, person to person, human to human, every month, but or whatever the interval. But between that time, that they would be able to provide additional sessions at presumably less cost than doing the full session, but some cost, where an AI bot would actually take them through. You know, he would actually be able to deliver the coaching in the way that this particular coach would want it delivered. I mean, that he would model it, and the bot would deliver it and be able to respond intelligently to the responses. Have you used or come across any
Yes.
use of AI like that? Because
so there are some coaches who are building on this. Marshall Goldsmith, of all the people, is one of them, who's building something called as a Marshall bot. It's being developed here in India, in Bangalore. And I was on one of the sessions with Marshall Goldsmith, wherein he was talking about it. And he says that initially it's just an audio model, and then he is going to graduate onto a audio and a video model, wherein you know, the person on the other side would feel that or see Marshall Goldsmith talking to him or her, but it's actually a bot, and it would be live. So while it's a great idea, and we'll only now get to see in future as to how successful it is, but I'm sure if a person like Marshall Goldsmith is thinking about creating a bot, he must have given it enough thought, and there must be value in it, you know.
Well, there are a couple of things there that are very valuable. Number one, that Marshall is just, you know, absolutely great at what he does, and being able to share himself with more people in the world because he doesn't have to be physically there all the time is something absolutely wonderful. There are lots of things already that can do that live, not only what Marshall's doing. I know other people who are doing that as well. But what a lot of them are doing with it now is saying they don't use it for follow-up, they use it for pre-work.
Okay.
So they say
Yeah.
people sign up first, do as many things as they can with the AI version of the coach, and work through a lot of things, and that is all recorded. And then when it gets to the point that the person says, well, this is all well and good, but I would also really like to speak to the real person, Marshall Goldsmith, whoever, then it graduates them to the next place where they can actually sign up for a live session. But a lot of the pre-work has already been done, and through the ideas of whoever the coach is, and the coach gets access to all of that information before they come into the live session. So it's the opposite of what you were saying, Charles, but I think it's also something very valuable because you sort of walk through the basics first with the AI, and then you get into the really difficult stuff that only the human person would be able to pick up. But the human person has such a wonderful, and Vinod and I both know how long it takes till you really get to where it is that you need to find out what the person is dealing with. And that can take a very long time if you're doing that with two people. But if the coach has access to all of that before, they, in the live session, can really get to the crux of things much more quickly and much easier because they already have all of that background information to start with. So there are two different ways of looking at that I think are both very valuable.
It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Yeah.
Mhm.
And I can see that being very applicable in all sorts of different fields. One of the areas I think is very lacking is coaching for young people as they approach, big life choices, like if they're going to further education, what sort of degree they want to take, but one way or another, whatever they're intending to do, to align their future career or their ideas about the future career with their values, and also obviously with their skills and if you like their psychological profile, if you're going for the profiling as well. So to combine all of those in a bot that would actually go through all of that would seem to be incredibly valuable. And you're not going to get human beings being able to do that to X number of million, 18-year-olds or whatever, 17-year-olds every year in one school, let alone one country.
Yeah.
So applications like that seem to me to be very obvious and could be absolutely wonderful, really, because the number of young people who embark upon a career and suddenly find themselves somewhere in their mid-20s or even later, just thinking, my God, I really made a mistake. I should have been, instead of this, I should have been that. Instead of being a lawyer, I should be a doctor. Instead of being a doctor, I should be a lawyer. Instead of being a, whatever. I should be doing something with human beings on the other side of it. Whatever it is, it would be just amazingly helpful, wouldn't it? And all other applications like getting jobs, people who find it difficult to get jobs. So a bit later in their lives, maybe the first job, second job, or when they fall out of employment in their, late middle age, all these difficult issues, which are very, very difficult to cope with by human being on human being. It's just too difficult, too expensive, too cumbersome to set up. You could actually reach so many of these social issues. You could also do a lot of damage, I agree, but the possibility is there.
The other possibility that's in this video that I mentioned with the books was he was saying it was a public holiday and he was working on something in his computer with some kind of software, and he wasn't getting the result that he wanted and he didn't know how to fix it. And he knew if he tried to call a hotline or support group or whatever, it'd be a very hard time to get anybody. And so what he did was he set up his phone with ChatGTP, and then he had his computer where he was working on this program, and he said, I'm trying to do this and I've clicked this and it doesn't work. And ChatGTP said, oh, well, try this. And why haven't you clicked that? And whatever he did from ChatGTP, it coached him through what he needed to do to be able to do things the same way a support person would do that, if you were talking to them online. So just having ChatGTP and this program running in parallel and him saying, look, this isn't working. What do I have to do now? And ChatGTP said, try this. And it worked. So that's a very minimalist thing, compared to what you were saying, Charles. But for those little, I wish there would be somebody here, the gentleman who does my tech lives 7 time zones away. I can't, every time I need something, I just can't grab him and say, look, help me figure this out. But now having something where I 24/7 could always just pick this up and say, look, help me out, is also an interesting thought. It's also in the same video that I mentioned before, so you'll be able to see the whole thing.
Sounds good.
Wonderful. Anything else I can do for you today, gentlemen?
Thank you very much, Rhonda. I know that we are well ahead of our scheduled time. So and I need to rush. I have another event to go to.
Okay,
So I look forward to another session in future.
wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Anything else from you, Charles?
No, nice to meet you, Vinod, and thank you very much indeed, Rhonda. That's really, really interesting. These conversations always go in different directions, don't they?
Yes, it's fascinating, and it's so important for us, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you gentlemen both a very nice rest of your day, and look forward to seeing you at another session soon.
And
Okay,
thanks very much.
bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.